Caitlin Clark was assaulted yesterday in her very first playoff game in the WNBA, directed at Caitlin Clark all year. It reached a boiling point yesterday. Caitlin Clark played a terrible game, shot 4 of 17 from the field.
The WNBA playoffs took a shocking and unfortunate turn when Caitlin Clark, one of the most celebrated and rising stars in the sport, was injured in her very first playoff game. This incident unfolded during a game between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun. In the early moments of the match, Clark was inadvertently hit in the eye by Dawn Carrington, leaving her with a black eye and causing significant controversy both on and off the court. While the physical impact on Clark was undeniable, the incident has led to heated debates about the fairness of officiating, player conduct, and the protection of star players in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark, known for her scoring prowess and dynamic playmaking, had a tough game, shooting just 4 for 17 from the field. Her performance was a far cry from her usual brilliance, as the Indiana Fever were dominated by the experienced and physical Connecticut Sun. While Clark's poor shooting could be attributed to a bad day on the court, many are questioning whether the eye injury she suffered early in the game impacted her ability to perform at her peak. In the first 2 minutes of the game, Clark was struck in the eye by Dawn Carrington, who, while attempting to contest a pass, allegedly jabbed Clark with her fingernails. Replays show that Carrington's hand veered downward toward Clark's eye, raising suspicions that the act may not have been entirely accidental. However, no foul was called, and the game proceeded without much discussion of the incident on the ESPN broadcast. This lack of attention to the injury, particularly to such a high-profile player like Clark, has led many to question whether the referees and the league are doing enough to protect their star athletes. The WNBA has always prided itself on being a physical league, but this incident has sparked debates about where the line should be drawn between physical play and dangerous conduct. Given the league's reliance on star power to drive viewership and revenue, the lack of immediate response to Clark's injury has raised concerns. Some argue that the WNBA cannot afford to allow its biggest stars to be exposed to unnecessary risk on the court, especially when the stakes are as high as they are in the playoffs. Professional sports leagues often take extra precautions to protect their star players, not only because of their importance to the game, but also due to their commercial value. In the NBA, for instance, referees are quick to call fouls when superstar players like LeBron James or Steph Curry are involved in contentious plays. Similarly, in the NHL, teams often employ enforcers, players whose primary role is to protect star players from physical harm. In hockey, the Edmonton Oilers famously had Dave Semenko to protect Wayne Gretzky, ensuring that no one would take liberties with the Great One. Without immediate consequences for dangerous plays, the risk of further incidents increases, and the message sent to both players and fans is problematic. It could lead to a culture where physical play crosses into reckless behavior, jeopardizing not just individual athletes, but the integrity of the sport. The WNBA must act swiftly and decisively to send a clear message that protecting its players, particularly its stars, is a top priority. The question that now arises is whether the WNBA should adopt a similar approach to protect its stars. Clark, often regarded as the Michael Jordan of the WNBA, is a player whose impact on the league goes beyond the court. Her presence drives ratings, sells merchandise, and attracts new fans to the game. Yet, the league's response to her injury seems underwhelming, leading many to wonder if the WNBA is doing enough to shield its marquee players from harm. What makes this incident even more controversial is Carrington's apparent history of physical play against Caitlin Clark. Earlier in the season, Carrington was seen mocking Clark on the court, and the two players have had physical encounters before. Some have speculated that this tension may have contributed to the incident in the playoffs, with Carrington perhaps seeking to gain a psychological or physical edge over Clark. While there is no definitive proof that Carrington intentionally injured Clark, the optics of the situation are troubling. The WNBA, like all professional sports leagues, is built on rivalries and intense competition, but there is a fine line between hard play and dangerous conduct. If Carrington's actions were indeed intentional, as some have suggested, it raises serious questions about sportsmanship and player safety in the league. Following the game, ESPN's coverage barely mentioned the incident, focusing instead on the Suns' victory and Alyssa Thomas's impressive triple-double. This lack of media attention to the injury has added to the frustration of fans who feel that the league is not taking the situation seriously enough. Many believe that Carrington should face consequences for her actions, potentially in the form of a suspension. The argument is that such a dangerous play cannot go unpunished, especially when it involves a player as important to the league as Caitlin Clark. If the WNBA fails to take appropriate action, it could set a dangerous precedent, allowing other players to engage in similar conduct without fear of repercussions. Despite the setback in the playoffs, the Indiana Fever have a bright future, largely thanks to Clark's talents. However, for the team to succeed in the long run, they will need to ensure that Clark is protected on the court. Some have suggested that the Fever need an enforcer-type player, someone who can stand up for Clark when opponents get too physical. Whether that role falls to Alyssa Smith or another player, it's clear that the Fever will need to adjust their approach if they want to ensure Clark's longevity and success in the league. Yet, her ability to fight back smart highlights the necessity for institutional support, especially from her teammates and coaching staff. The Fever must rally around Clark, not only to shield her from physical threats, but to ensure her confidence on the court remains unshaken. Without such protection, Clark's longevity and her ability to maintain her high level of play could be compromised. In conclusion, the incident involving Caitlin Clark and Dayon Carrington has cast a shadow over the WNBA playoffs. While it's unclear whether Carrington's actions were intentional or accidental, the lack of a significant response from the league has raised concerns about the protection of star players. As the WNBA continues to grow in popularity, it must address these issues to ensure the safety and success of its players, particularly those who are driving the league's visibility and financial success. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe buttons for more interesting videos on your favorite sports.